Dylan is working on updating our save system, which I've talked about a lot on our
Oh
streams.
yeah.
But I have no idea why we're doing that.
Why we're doing the save system?
Yeah, or why we're redoing it or changing it.
Yeah.
I know roughly, but I think you're better at explaining it because you're the one that's actually doing it.
Yeah, sure. Sure, that's good logic. Um, let's see. I was actually thinking about doing that for this stream instead, but this felt more constructive because we want to get the engine up and going as fast as possible. So I'm actually launching the editor now to see if it works. But it's on the other screen, so you won't be able to see it, unfortunately. But yeah, we're changing the save system. So right now, everything that is saved has to be in persistent worlds or always loaded levels, which means when you load the game, it has to load like every destructible rock, check to see if it's still there, and all of this stuff. And it means that, well, for one, it's bad for rendering because you have a lot of really far away culling objects. It stopped us from adding features before because we didn't want to introduce more world actors that are always present, which it just basically continually hurting performance. So what I'm doing is, and this is actually done-ish, but it probably won't go live for a little while for behind-the-scenes reasons. But essentially now we can save these actors in the streaming tiles. So when you load in, like when you stream in a new tile, we can have the actors in there versus having them in the always loaded worlds. And there's like 10,000 like actors that just are always there, from destructible rocks to slugs, what have you, spore flowers. And that's bad. We didn't like that. But it is also a pain. And there's going to be a migration process, and that's a little problematic, and we also don't want to, ruin people's saves. So I do think we're going to have a little powwow with the save editor, though, because that's such a nice tool. But it's going to.
I was reminded because I also was reminded because I saw Anther here, who's worked a lot on the Satisfactory calculator site.
Ooh, nice.
You're gonna
also
be sad when we change
that. Yeah. So before we had one root set where we would serialize everything down into like one archive, and now we have per level archive. So each tile gets its own archive to get saved. Most of the logic, I think, I say this without having looked at the code for those things, will translate, and you'll just have to do some modifications to kind of redirect it. But I think we'll also we'll probably be helping out people that want to know the save archive structure and everything when the time comes. This is still a ways off.
Does that have any impact on like the save time in game?
Yes, ish. Theoretically, it's reduced because we're not having to save the world actors. So every time a tile is streamed out, it saves. It saves its archive. It won't change the disk write time, which is actually not most of the time anyway. But in my tests, it was almost identical, unfortunately. But that was on massive factories, and we're talking like 100 to 200,000 factory objects versus the 10,000 world objects that are no longer being serialized down. So it was, fairly insignificant when you're comparing that scale. So for people on smaller bases or slower computers, you'll likely see an increase. Like a reduced save time. But yeah, it's more.
We'll get to that at some point.
That's a separate task kind of. It was while I was working on this, I was finding places to optimize, but we didn't want to make that the focus of that. We want to get that working first, and then you don't want to introduce more bugs when you're completely overhauling such a key system like that.